here, and I'm going to start recording, and we're going to start the webinar, and we're already live on Facebook, I'm sure. That always catches me off guard because it goes live like as soon as I click it, but on my end I see a bar uploading.
Oh no, it's live. Good. I'm very excited about this topic too.
I know. This is I think it's really important because I think, well, I hate to say too much because I feel like, oh my God, we have so much to say about it, you know?
But you know what's funny is every year I look forward to my conferences. And I don't go to like conferences a lot, but there's 2 every year legal conferences that I go to that are overnights or it's a day-long thing where I get to do networking. And I've just got to accept that that's not part of 2021.
Although I think I'm going to a conference in June. It's supposed to be at the end of June.
Okay.
And it's in Texas. Yeah, Texas is open. Texas is open now.
Yeah, and you might be vaccinated by then.
That's what I'm thinking too, because I heard that Mercer County is talking about doing the vaccinations. Most of Mercer County is vaccinated by summer.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you know what? That would be cool.
That would be
hey, really Amanda. Cool. Hi, Lisa. Welcome. I love that we have sort of a regular crew, right?
I know.
Hi, Jason.
Jason, we were just talking about you. All good things.
Yeah.
I'm going to get started. I would hope for conferences.
So Amanda does some like amazing conferences, amazing travel. And she's networking with these like family lawyers in England and, like all across the world. And I'm like, huh. So Jason, it's okay. We're waving back at you.
Jason, we're waving back. We feel it. We feel it right here. We don't have
8:26. Let's get going.
Okay. So welcome to Empowering Women Entrepreneurs, our very special co-host, Aisha Hamilton, the owner at Hamilton Law, and she focuses her practice on employment law. So I was reading the chat in the middle of speaking.
Yeah, we missed you too, Lisa.
And I am Alisa McCabe. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial, and we help small businesses get their act together. All information and content on this webinar is for general purposes only. And today we are talking about how to recreate that in-person conference experience through Zoom. When you connect with someone, how to continue after that first meeting, how to be the person that someone wants to have a second date with. And Aisha and I have been talking about this so much because we're both obviously experiencing this in so many ways, as is everybody else. But the first thing I want to talk about is something that there's so many people that I have heard have said, oh, I can't wait till it goes back to the way it was. And it was really interesting because I don't think it's ever going to go back to the way it was.
No, and honestly, isn't this more efficient?
This is so, and I think that people say, well, you can't create relationships. I ever created a relationship with people that are on this call right now. Right. It's like, and that I've never met before, that I feel a connection to.
Yeah.
And I think I've made so many relationships during this pandemic through Zoom.
So Alisa, and we won't, no names to be mentioned, but we were just talking about an individual who relies on his in-person presence, his looks, his sort of good old boy personality, and he complains more than anybody else about this Zoom environment.
Yeah.
And I posted an article from Forbes into the chat. And essentially the takeaway, the very top of this article is embrace it, for God's sake. Just accept that this is what we're going to be doing, and don't be negative about sort of the way we have to interact these days, right? So the way in which we resisted getting our children's cell phones, or acknowledging that there is a different way in which our kids interact with technology than what we do and what we think is healthy, and just having to accept that. Accept Zoom, accept it into your life, embrace it.
Yeah, and if you don't, I think you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. So we were joking that, all right, well, for those of us who come to this call, for those of us who attend Zoom networking and embrace it, that's our competitive advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And the technology is finally catching up. So Aisha sponsored a webinar the other day. Maybe it was even yesterday. I don't know. My days are all running
I've
together.
lost Tuesday.
It was excellent. It was about domestic violence in the workplace, and it was phenomenal. The other part that was phenomenal, it was on this platform called Remo, and it showed a conference room map, and it had tables. And so you could jump from table to table. All you had to do was hover over and see who was at that table, see if you wanted to go sit. It was called Remo, Remo. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And the woman who was hosting, who has this app that helps people in domestic violence situations, she used it for her day-long conference.
Yeah.
And it named different, she actually named different tables because the people who spoke at the workshops were sitting at that table. So if you wanted to go speak to the person who presented, you could go to their table.
Right.
It was freaking so cool. I know, mind blown. Me too. It was like, oh my God. And I couldn't even pay attention for a little while because I was like, my head, the little hamster was running. Like, oh my God, how can I utilize this? But technology is catching up with what we're doing.
Yeah. And Beth, just to follow up on the mind blown, right? When we go to conferences, in fact, Beth and I and Amanda and I met at these legal conferences that we go to, and you sit next to each other and you chat, and then you exchange a business card, and then you follow up, right? This Remo platform did
Oh,
that. It did that.
it
It was crazy.
It was whoever did it is a total genius. It's really expensive. I think it's like $300 a month, they were saying, to have it. But if you are a big organizer,
Yeah.
like, you could do this. You could run, like, it inspired me to think, like, could I run a conference?
Right.
Like, what if I ran a conference? Or what if I decided to have a workshop, a really big workshop, and to make it intimate? And
Right.
I think that's what people think is missing on Zoom, is that intimacy, that getting to know about people's families, and maybe it's hard to be yourself,
Right.
but I have to disagree on that. I want to know how you're not yourself. Like,
Right.
I mean,
I think you have to be
yeah.
yourself, right? I mean, well, I don't know who else I would be. I like me.
And I've
So,
tried on other personalities and they don't fit.
right? And so I think that, the big thing also in this article was, you've got to be, and one of the things I think we have to be careful about is when we attend conferences, we are very apt to multitask, right? Because you're
Yeah.
sitting at your desk and you've got your email window open and you're seeing emails filter in and you're starting to, oh my God, I can stop listening here. Well, I think you should say to yourself, this time that I'm here, it's okay to multitask for some of it, but some of it I should also be very clear about. I should multitask my marketing. So if you get thrown into a breakout room, I love breakout rooms. I attended a conference yesterday via Zoom, and one of the portions was going into the breakout room. And it was funny because Beth and I were texting back and forth, and she's like, oh, I'm not going to the breakout room. I'm like, no, I think we have to. We have to stay and do the breakout room and force ourselves to do it. And we did. And both walked away from that going, hey, that was great. I met somebody new. I didn't know these attorneys before. We had a nice chat. Now, the thing that I should have done with the breakout room that I did not do, because you get whooshed out of the breakout room before you expect your time is up, is I should have written down the names of the people that I was connecting with in the breakout room, and then private message them or chat them in the main session to say, hey, I would love to continue our conversation. That was fantastic. And I didn't do that. So practice tip 1, do that.
Write down the names. So the only thing I don't like about breakout rooms, and maybe this is just me because I went to a networking event. There was like 100 people there and they did breakout rooms. And this is please don't take offense if you're in these industries. But for me to meet would be someone who owns their own business, not someone who does Arbonne. And so even though it's nice to talk to them, and I'm sure in some way, we could, be referral partners, it's just not, it's a lot of time spent with somebody and the return is very little. So that is the only thing that really bothers me, because often I will find I'm in a room with someone who needs a job, who works for Arbonne, or who is trying to sell something to me. And I'm thinking, don't sell something.
That's the benefit of being an employment lawyer, networking with other lawyers.
Yes.
Is quite often they don't know an employment lawyer, right? They know a lot of PI lawyers, they know people who do contracts, but they don't know people that do what I do. But I have to say, Amanda had a great tip. She says, breakout room tip, take a screenshot, easy to quick cut and paste into a Word document, and you're not distracting from the conversation. That's brilliant. It's fantastic.
Thank God you're on here.
Yeah, exactly.
You just saved us all kinds of scribbling and like missing out on conversation.
But that's something to sort of get in the habit of doing, right? So just practice it at the next sort of group meeting you're in, even if you're not in a breakout room per se, but just find a way to notate who, Beth puts genius with a capital J, referencing a meme or a video we saw on Facebook. But so the importance, I think, is once you're in this networking scenario, right? And I'll tell you, so Alisa and I came up with this topic because I was complaining about how I got on a one-on-one Zoom call with someone that had been connected to me by somebody else and said, oh, you two should really meet. And I say, great, he's some kind of business broker or something. I was like, oh, that's a good connection for me. We get on the Zoom call, it's exactly this format. And he had decided that the way he was gonna, quote, approach this meeting, run this meeting, was he would speak for the first 30 minutes and then I would speak. And let me tell you something, by minute 15, I was thinking of ways to get off this call.
Yeah.
And will I ever follow up with him again? No, because he's absolutely not worth my time.
Yeah, that's somebody who doesn't, again, who hasn't adapted to the new normal.
Right.
But
even in the old paradigm, would you ever do that? Right.
No, if you were in a one-on-one conversation, that that wouldn't fly either. I just want to jump back to the conference, the remote conference. So I actually was on an all-day conference, and I knew if I was sitting at my desk, I wouldn't pay attention. So I took my laptop and I sat in the living room.
Nice.
Because we weren't on camera, so it was, and they weren't, I don't think it had any breakout rooms. They actually had these things called brain dates, which were absolutely cool. Ooh. So what it is people list their expertise. They say like, hey, I know how to hire really great staff. If anybody wants to talk to me, I'm going to be here at 11 o'clock. And you can sign in just to have like these small, intimate conversations. Right. And that was really cool. And you are on camera for those. But for the rest of it, I had to remove myself from my office because there's just too much to do in my office.
So Amanda asks, do we have any tech or equipment tips? I will tell you that the ring light is probably your basic essential. You need this no matter what.
You want to show everybody your ring light? Can you unclip it? Can you move it?
That's my ring light.
That is great. Mine actually, it doesn't give you a headache. No, well, you know what? You can't have it on all day. You want to see my light? My light's enormous. I have like the big.
She's got the professional setup.
But I do a lot of webinars too. So
Yeah. So I'm going to show
um,
you this thing too. And it's called a Loom Cube, right? It's very reasonable. It's a light. I don't know if it's charged. No, it's not charged, but it clips onto the side of your laptop. It's got the little sticky thing. I can clip it to the side of my monitor. I think you need some form of lighting. I have been on a ton of calls where people are sort of in the dark, kind of sliding back and forth. And honestly, it's disconcerting, but it's part of the impression I'm receiving too, right? It's all
wait a
about
minute.
first
Oh, wait a
impression.
minute. How about this? This is my favorite. So
Really?
hi, how you doing? I'm like, excuse me, can you fix your camera?
Right.
Like someone said they were in an event and the person gave a whole presentation like that.
Yeah.
So please, people, you have to be centered in it.
Yeah.
Like that's part of getting that second, that's part of presenting yourself, because how you present yourself makes it accessible to get that second call, to have that second conversation. Because if you haven't figured out Zoom by now, you're not someone I want to talk to. Sorry, ain't happening.
Yeah. It's been almost a year.
Yeah,
Right.
we've
Um,
had plenty of time to practice.
and then, this article too from Forbes said, really pay attention to your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if you anticipate that your dog is going to be barking, like figure out a solution around that, right? If it's a long day of meetings, plan all your Zoom meetings on one day and then go into the office to handle that or something, just figure
Yeah.
out what you can do. But it goes back to the rules of in-person engagement still apply,
It'll
right?
apply.
The 80-20, listen 80% of the time, speak 20% of the time still applies. The be professionally dressed and present yourself for the best possible first impression still applies. It's just we're doing it in a different way.
Yeah, and I mean, so many things about this environment have changed because you don't have to be in person. So you don't have to do the back of your hair. You just don't have to do it. It doesn't have to happen. Your makeup doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody, you can't see that close. We're not the Kardashians. We're not like, there doesn't have to be, it can be business on top and party on the bottom. Like there's so many things that we can do that, it doesn't require a huge amount of effort. I think I actually think it's no brainer things. I really do. At this point, your background, look, you can have a fake background.
Right.
I mean, like there's so many things that you can do. I think the people who haven't quite figured out the whole 80-20 rule too,
Right.
it's time to really practice that.
Well,
And
and especially on Zoom, right? When we have Zoom fatigue, I don't think Zoom networking meetings, one-on-ones shouldn't really last more than an hour. I don't think they should be that long either.
no, I think you can do a lot in 30 minutes.
Right.
My son actually, I have discussions with my 23-year-old son who's currently living at home due to COVID. And it's really interesting the way he has conversations. So we discuss controversial subjects. And as you might imagine, a 23-year-old's opinion is different than mine. So, but he keeps the conversation going, and I think this is really important when you are having a conversation with somebody. He doesn't tell you his opinion. He asks you questions, and I love it because it keeps the conversation going. It doesn't shut you down. It doesn't, and I think that's important, especially on Zoom, because if you're having a conversation with someone, to continually ask questions. He does give his opinion, but you don't feel as threatened by it. And I asked him about it. I literally was just talking to him about it yesterday. I said, I love the way you do that. He said, I got that from Joe Rogan. He listens to Joe Rogan a lot, and Joe Rogan has all these incredibly controversial people on, like, and he continues to ask them questions about like, well, how did you come up with that? And why is this like that? And
Isn't that the best way to engage a conversation, right?
yes.
And goes to that 80-20 rule. Lisa Snyder makes a great point of so many advantages of this type of networking, right? No travel, shorter prep time, don't worry about road conditions. Absolutely. And this is why I want this to continue, right? I don't want to have to go back to the 7:30 a.m. BNI meeting that I have to get to at 7, which means I have to leave my house at 6:30 and
Means I
I'm
have to get
taking
up
up
at
a chunk of
4:30.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I
Exactly.
totally agree. I think this needs to stay. I think this is fantastic. I have widened my circle during this time, but I feel like it's a much narrower field of people.
Right.
And I'm okay with that because it's actually almost streamlined who I talk to. And I'm okay with that
Right.
because at networking, you might talk to 5 or 10 people in the room, and really one person might be someone who you want to talk to again. Whereas I feel like when you go on these networking, the Zoom ones, the people who are on there are people who are serious about what they're doing. They're there for a reason.
It's pre-screened already.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. So I love that. I do. And the whole efficiency thing goes along with my personality.
Right.
So
And then don't forget the like next step, right? Is you've walked away with a screenshot of some names of people you thought, oh, I love the way she spoke. I love the presentation or whatever. Follow up, right? And don't wait a month and throw this on your to-do list to follow up. I would follow up that night, send them a LinkedIn connection, remind them this is how we met. I loved our conversation, love to set up a one-on-one, right?
yeah,
I also find that when people have done that for me, but they send me a LinkedIn message, I will say to them, I don't check LinkedIn quite as often as I check my regular email. Here's my regular email me directly,
yeah.
or give me your regular email and I'll email you directly. So try to streamline your processes too, so you're not checking 5 different locations for networking.
Yeah. And the other thing that, the article talked about was keep it human and tell stories of mistakes or, and recovery, like how you did things. And I love that. And I think that's really important to let everybody know that, like, I'm not always as fabulous as polished as I am right now.
But it's a connection point,
And
right?
it is
To
because I
laugh
think
about it.
it's true, because I think on Zoom, you can give the impression that, because like on Facebook, like, here's my perfect life. And oh my God, I meditated and exercised today, and my children are perfect. And, you can tend to give that impression. And I think it's really, really helpful. And it makes that incredible connection to do that, to be able to have that. But one thing that I highly, I can't stress enough, please don't degrade yourself or downplay yourself. I have been on webinars where people go, "Oh, it's so stupid." And I want to reach out and go, honey, let's have a call. Let's have a confidence code class. Because don't say that. Don't, like, be yourself, but don't be that self.
Right. Yeah,
Because
that's tough.
it yeah, and it doesn't make me want to talk to you more.
Right.
It makes me go, oh, that's that's too much.
Yeah. So let's talk about before the call. What are the types of things you do to prepare for the call? So not just setting up your tech and making sure your environment's good, but do you email the person or sort of set a discussion point or an agenda before the call?
Um, I actually go into detective sleuth mode, and I search everywhere. I Google their name. I I even look at some of their connections, see if we have any connections in common. I check them out head to toe, because a lot of times I find talking points about different things. I had an accountant who is just the freaking funniest accountant I've ever met. He actually researched me and the person who works on his client's account, and he referred to us by what college we went to.
Oh, wow.
He's like, hey, Miss UMass and Miss URI, blah, blah, blah. And I was like,
Impressive.
But it made me laugh. And I thought that was like really funny that he researched it. So from that, I've done that. Now, some people find that creepy that you've looked into, but I'm like, it's public information.
Yeah.
If you don't want me to know that you went to this college, or you worked at this place, or you support X charity, then don't put it on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Yeah, I actually, I think I would appreciate the fact that you took the time to, I mean, I've had people
I
say
do
to
it
me,
that
hey,
way.
I was looking at your website.
Yeah.
I saw this thing. What does that mean? Or tell me
Mhm.
about this event or something. It's just a conversation starter.
Yeah.
You know?
So I don't know if anybody's read the Four Agreements, but one of the things is it's not all about you.
Wait, what? Another mind blown moment.
But I agree. I think it's important to do your homework and find out information about this person, and
Right.
because it does help with talking points. But I think people who are very comfortable with themselves feel like, oh, this person's like serious about having this conversation. And I
Right.
think it's a good start to it.
And over this last 9 months of getting more comfortable with Zoom calls and actually doing a ridiculous amount of networking, I will prepare for the call. I won't necessarily send somebody an email that says, hey, I'd love to learn more about you in these areas, right? But I have a very clear post-it note in front of me when we're doing that call on what I hope to accomplish from that call, right? And it isn't just about, I'm going to talk at you for 30 minutes about who I am and what I do. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And what I really want to accomplish from that call is I want you to like me, right?
Mm.
I want us to get along. I want us to sort of build a first level platform to then say, hey, we can, let's chat, or I'd like to invite you to join this group, or I'd like to, I take notes, and so I've gotten pretty good at taking notes without looking down. And so I
You
do.
hear the click, 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 click in the background. Or do you handwrite?
Because I don't want the typing to show up.
Genius.
So
Yeah.
I take notes on key points, and then in their contact, I go in and record those notes. But I also now, because I've done that, remember that we talked about this particular employment issue or this particular world issue, and then you see an article on it and you send it to them, right? All of those little things that we did in in-person networking still apply, and they're actually easier because in in-person networking, I had to wait till I got out to my car
Oh
to
my
make
God.
notes on the back of their cards.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I love it. So as a technical note, where do you keep all these notes?
so I make them on a little post-it as we're chatting, right? Because I don't want the typing. And then I go into like in my phone where I created the contact for this person, or on, my G Drive or wherever where my contacts are. I just put the information in the notes section of that contact. And so 2 years from now, and this has happened to me where last year I got calls for work from clients that I had represented like 10 years ago. And I was like, I know the name, I know they were a client, but I can't remember specifics of husband, kids, but I had all of that in the notes.
That's so fantastic.
So,
So as if anybody is an Apple fan, I'm not, I don't have Apple products, but my daughter does. And she got frustrated with school because it's online, it's half online and half in school. She got an iPad, and it has an app that you write your notes, but it populates it as text.
oh, wow.
So it translates your handwriting into text. So, because what was happening is she was taking handwritten notes because it's better to remember things when you handwrite them. And so she needs to remember all these things. And she did much better when she handwrote them. But then she would have to go on her computer and type it out in an outline and do all these things. And now she got an iPad specifically for it. So she just writes it. So if anybody has Apple products, Aisha's handwriting these things down so you don't make that noise. It's also an option, which
Yeah. Yeah, and I use an iPad for work, as Beth had turned me on to this program called Notability. And I
Yes,
think Notability does that.
yes, it does. That was one of the options.
Yeah.
But then she told me that it's actually on the iPad. There's an app that does it, and it connects with your laptop, and it'll show up in a document.
Wow. That's a
Yeah.
great practice tip too.
Oh, so that was fabulous, because that is a problem. Where do you keep all these notes for everybody?
Right.
You know what,
We're
we have
almost out of time.
I know. I love this discussion because I think it's so important. Next time, we're going to be talking about advice on public speaking. A lot of people dread it, and it's something that everybody has to do at some point. And how do you get the courage to do it? And can you learn these skills? And there aren't a lot of situations where you're actually in front of physical people. So I think this is also going to be a secondary discussion about Zoom, like getting in front of people. And speaking of that, I'm going to do a self promo. I have a webinar next week that I'm doing. It's all about budgeting, when, why, and how. And we're actually going to create a budget together online, because I'm tired of being on webinars where someone talks the whole time, including me. I want to have it more interactive. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then on Wednesday, January 27th, we are going to be having the Powering the Perpetual Pivot with Jason Meyer, who's always on here. He and Aisha are going to be talking about professionalism in a difficult world. And if anybody's interested in any of these items, I am going to put them in the chat.
That should be an emotionally charged discussion, though Jason and I can keep it light.
And Aisha, do you have anything coming up? Because you had that awesome event.
I nothing that comes to mind. It's just I go day to day at this point, so
All right.
mostly consumed by work.
Aren't we all? And then I have one more I'm going to post in the link. That one was for the perpetual pivot, and this one is for my webinar. So it was great seeing everybody. I hope everybody has a good week. And
yeah, thank you for being here. We'll have, next week, I think is going to be a fun discussion.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So it was great seeing everybody. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you in a week.
Yep, you should all get your ring lights.
Yeah, we want to see everybody's ring lights next week.
Bye.